wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Welcome back to the Toronto Till I Die podcast. My name is Michael Singh, and it's a special off-season edition of today's podcast. And if you'll notice, it's just your boy, Michael Singh, on here solo right now. Jeffrey P. Nesker is having some technical difficulties, while Mike Newell is off somewhere celebrating a very well-deserved Canadian Premier League title with Forge, of course, who emerged victorious yesterday against Atletico Ottawa. We'll get into some of that in just a little bit. Actually, it's the off season, and usually during this time, there's not that much to talk about. But on today's show, we got a number of different topics. We've kind of gone beyond Toronto FC today, but we will still be getting to some TFC later on. We got some Canadian Premier League finals that I just mentioned. We're going to talk some Canadian women's national team, the men's national team, of course, as they are on the brink of starting off this World Cup. It's less than a month away, which sounds just surreal to say. Yeah, Richard, we will be talking about some Messi to Inter Miami because that obviously completely broke headlines this morning and honestly almost broke Twitter on my end. I couldn't believe that when I woke up this morning and saw that report. So we'll chat about that a little bit and the likelihood of that happening. We'll talk some MLS Cup Finals. As we know, the MLS Cup Finals are set. The Philadelphia Union versus LAFC, a matchup I think really a lot of people had pegged from sort of the middle of the season when both of these teams hit their stride. So it's very fitting, cup final here. And then we'll, as I mentioned, we'll talk some TFC free agency. So yeah, like I said, ton to get to. We'll start off with the Canadian Premier League Finals. Forge winning 2-0 at Atletico Ottawa, their third title in 4 seasons. And honestly, what's left to say about Bobby Smirniotis' side? He overall has gotten that team to, I don't think, a place anyone would have predicted at the start of the launch of the Canadian Premier League just a few years back. And now we're talking about Forge reaching 4 straight finals, 3 titles now in the last 4 years. They obviously went on that run in the CONCACAF League. I mean, this is a team that, in every meaning of the word, they're a dynasty. Forge FC are a dynasty, and I have to wonder, like, what's next for this team? Like, what's there left to really accomplish? And the biggest thing is the CONCACAF, right? The CONCACAF Champions League now, with the Canadian Premier League now securing a couple berths into that competition. Let's see what's going to happen with this Canadian Premier League, and I guess how much they're going to grow. Yeah, Richard, I see you saying there in the chat, the CPL can't show the game over air on a network like CBC, Sportsnet, or TSN. Yeah, I guess with One Soccer owning the rights, I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully, I agree with you. I think we need to get that game on a more mainstream platform, and we'll see maybe if that happens in the future. But I'm with you there. Okay, so yeah, like I said, Forge is a dynasty. There's not much left to say about this team. I'm just wondering now at this point what's next, and maybe what's next for a guy like Bobby Smirniotis. We know in the past how much, with the roots that he has in place here in Ontario, specifically Southern Ontario, his ties to Sigma, and of course what he's accomplished with Forge. The ties to Toronto FC just seem to never go away with Bobby Smirniotis. And obviously, now that Bob Bradley is at the helm here with Toronto FC, that place is secure. That's not going to change. But could Bobby Smirniotis be linked back to Toronto FC if, for whatever reason, the start of the year doesn't go to plan for TFC? Will those talks start to heat back up? Will those rumors start to heat back up? because Smirniotis right now, you got to think he has to be some sort of coveted commodity. And he's, aside from a international cup or an international tournament title, he is he's accomplished everything that he could accomplish with Forge, right? So what's next for him? And considering that he is in TFC's own backyard, well, we hope the best for Bobby. You would also hate from a TFC perspective if he goes elsewhere and he succeeds, and TFC could be like, dang, they're missing out. So yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on that story as the year progresses. Again, Bob's job is safe. If TFC play well, no one really cares what happens with Bobby. But if not, then you have to start, thinking about it and thinking about it. Um, I would just want to give a quick shout out also to the crowd at Atletico Ottawa. I think the atmosphere, just coming through the television screen, I wasn't there in person, but obviously a lot of former Wake and the Rad staff and a lot of people that I know that were at the stadium all said good things, and you could see it coming through the TV as well. So, good testament for the league now, what in its fourth year, and we're pulling crowds like 15, 16K. I think that was it was a special final for a lot of different reasons. So, yeah, shout out to Atletico Ottawa, even though they fell short, but Forge was victorious. All right, cool. Just on the rundown here, I'm just trying to pull up what I have next, where I want to go to. Right, from the Canadian Premier League to NWSL, I got to give a quick shout out to Christine Sinclair, Janine Becky, Ryan Wilkinson, who's the head coach, and Creta LeBlanc for winning the NWSL championship, defeating Desiree Scott's Kansas City Current 2-0. If anyone saw that picture of Christine Sinclair floating around social media, come on, just absolutely just legendary photo. And listen, like Bobby, at this point, what's there left to be said about Christine Sinclair? What she's able to do, still do, and produce and play a role for this, not only Portland, but also now for the Canadian women's national team moving forward is surreal at her age. But everyone already knows that. I don't need to ramble on about how great Christine Sinclair is, but I thought it was just another accolade you got to mention for what she's been able to sort of accomplish here overall. So Canadian women's national team roster obviously dropped today. A pair of friendlies coming up against Brazil, I believe one on the 11th and one on the 15th in Sao Paulo, which is a great test for the women's national team as they prepare obviously for the World Cup. Now, an interesting tidbit that I saw, it's just looking at the roster, you'll recognize there's a couple names on there you probably haven't seen before. And an interesting tidbit that I saw was Bev Priestman. Since she took over as coach, 50 players have been called into the women's senior team. And I got to thinking, like, is that a good thing? Or would you rather more consistency? I've gone back and forth with this because I can see both sides. On the one hand, you're getting more and more experience, you're adding depth to just your overall pool of players. And a lot of these young players, they're going to benefit from just participating in camps and just being around people like Christine Sinclair and being in the environment of a national team camp. But on the other hand, would you not like to build up reps with the same, or at least close to the same 11? Obviously, you can't do that because of certain injuries and just certain cases that arise. That's inevitable for any national team program. But I wonder if 50 is a little bit excessive in terms of the players that she's calling up. But on the other hand, and like I said, I keep going back and forth. I like the fact she also is rewarding a lot of players for what she's been able to accomplish. And I see in the wings here, we got our guy Jeffrey P. Nesker, who has fixed.
Hopefully, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Welcome to the show.
Amazing. Dude, that was a white knuckle ride there for a second. I thought my whole brand new awesome computer had died, and it really made me sad. But no, it was just the internet. So what did I miss, Mike? You can't leave you to do this all by yourself.
No, I'm just happy that people now don't have to listen to me rambling on and on. So happy to have you in. We are just
Indeed.
talking about the women's national team. I gave a quick shout out
Ah,
to Portland for their NWSL championship.
yep,
Obviously, Renee
yep.
Wilkinson and Karina LeBlanc, the GM and head coach there, and then Janine and Christine for their title, beating Desiree Scott. I know you had some thoughts on
Hmm.
the game itself. Just quickly, what were they?
Uh, yeah, I did. It was a game of mistakes, obviously. Sophia Smith, with that early capitalization, and then the own goal to make it two for the Thorns. I thought they really took advantage of the mistakes of the current, and Leslie won themselves a championship. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I think it was overall well deserved, and we gotta get a team to Toronto. We have to get a team to Toronto because Portland was like the Canadian team that people,
Yeah,
affiliated themselves
yeah,
with because there was so much red and white that bled through that system. Um,
sure thing,
so
sure thing.
that was a team that a lot of Canadians were cheering for, but we need our own team, whether it's in Toronto, whether it's in Vancouver, wherever it is, we need a team in our own backyard that we can root for. And I was at work today, and one of the basketball guys was telling me that they caught the NWSL final, and they were
Hmm.
saying, man, the WNBA has to watch out because that final was a lot of fun to watch, and they were a really big fan of it. So I think that's a testament to sort of the level of play there, but we got to do better.
Yeah, an interesting choice of words when you say caught, considering that this wasn't something you would have found if you were, just aimlessly looking around. Like you had to log into Twitch. You really had to know what you were doing to catch this game. And then the other interesting point that I would raise with the Thorns is, yeah, they're Canada's team, but you try getting an NWSL jersey from the Thorns or otherwise to Toronto without getting absolutely stopped by the exchange rate and shipping charges. So yeah, I mean, I can understand the trepidation with NWSL. We're a bit divided. People want a CPL women's league, which comes with its own round of problems, most especially the financing angle. And then with NWSL, obviously, without getting too heavy into it, this league's been plagued with controversy over controversy over
Hmm.
controversy. So not an easy sell when you're talking about potential owners wanting to tie their wagon to a league that's consistently finding itself the subject of controversy and bad vibes. I don't really know the solution. I mean, there, name me a soccer league that doesn't have its share of controversy and bad vibes. I think in
Yeah.
such cases, the expectation for perfection is a bit too high. The cost of entry into NWSL isn't that prohibitive. And all things being equal, I've always been on the side of why don't we pull an MLS and have the three major Canadian markets get into the NWSL warts and all. But I can see why there would be an issue with somebody holding the purse strings. So I agree with you, but I'm not quite sure I know what the answer is on that tip.
Well, I do have some insight from a Toronto FC MLSC
Always do.
perspective, and I do
Let's
know that
go.
they are interested, and they have had discussions about bringing an NWSL franchise to Toronto. But what I
Hmm.
will add is it's not imminent from at least Toronto FC and
Yeah.
MLSC's standpoint, right? And I think maybe part of that reason is because of what's happening with the league. Where is this? What is this league going to look like in 2 years? Is there going to be another option
Hmm.
in 2 years? But I know those discussions are ongoing, and there is interest from their standpoint, which is great to hear because obviously we're very far behind on that from that perspective.
100%. Here's a question for you. I know that when the MLSC wanted to hitch their wagon to the CPL would not let a team such as TFC2 or anything branded with the TFC branding in the doors.
Right.
Would NWSL be more okay with a Toronto FC women's or a Toronto FCW or whatever the case may be? Or would they insist on like a Portland Thorns, Portland Timbers kind of situation?
Yeah, it might be like that. I'm not honestly too sure. That being
Okay.
said, I don't think it's much of an issue. Like you said, Portland Thorns, Portland Timbers, we know they're
Yeah.
owned by the
Yeah.
same ownership group. I think if that's not a make or break for the league, I just don't
No,
know
I
whether or
don't
not
think
that's
so
like a
either.
that's a sticking point.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, let's move on here. So I talked briefly about the Canadian Premier League final. Just quickly, but just gonna backtrack a little bit, Jeff. Anything you
Mhm.
want to add about the final itself?
Congratulations, Forge. A well-deserved win. You beat Ottawa in their own house. You dominated the game for most stretches. There was a brief interval at the end of this first half where Ottawa looked really, really threatening. But then, of course, the halftime whistle ran, and they went back to the lockers, and they came out pretty flat-footed against Forge in the second half. My biggest takeaway: it was very, very nice to see TD Place that full.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Kudos to the marketing people in Ottawa that have been doing a great job all season with theme nights and that sort of thing. Kudos to what's going on behind the scenes with the Ottawa SGs. I know there's a lot of them, so I'm not going to mention them all by name, but certainly they're bringing the heat there. You know, you can see why the CPL wanted the Ottawa Fury as one of the founding teams. Not the least of which for that continuity, but we've been hearing that Ottawa will come out for a winning team, and we saw it writ large
There's a
over the
market.
weekend. So
There's a
yeah, there's
market,
definitely a market there.
and one of the things I don't think we talk about enough, and we sort of just gloss over at this point, is how huge of a coup it was for the league to
Hmm.
get Atletico to buy into the Canadian Premier League, like Atletico Madrid, how they own
Yes.
Atletico Ottawa. I think that's
Hmm.
so massive, and I know that other teams overseas are interested in doing the same here in the Canadian Premier League. And I think just having
Well, I
those
mean,
ties, as we've
yeah.
seen with Ottawa, it's massive.
City Football Group, come on, let's go, let's go. Uh,
Let's go.
no, I mean, it's not unique in the football world, and certainly it puts us, to use the City Football Group examples, it puts us on that kind of pedestal. And I do believe this isn't the first time Atletico Madrid have ventured out into ownership in other leagues. Provides a great pipeline for them, and a chance to get their players, because they, as a club in a big top 5 tier league, they have a lot of guys that are fighting for minutes, even though they play domestic cups and their domestic season, and on occasion in Europe. So it's just another outlet for their prospects to get more playing minutes, and they get to develop coaches in their system with real first team minutes, such as Carlos Gonzalez, and he won Coach of the Year in the CPL, and trust me, that award is going on his mantelpiece with whatever other awards he hopefully wins for himself as his career progresses. It's an important stepping stone, and it does provide more eyeballs on the league. So yeah, we're very, very lucky to have them. Absolutely, absolutely. And if they're interested in a second team, there's a struggling franchise in Edmonton that could probably use some influx of money. So maybe they can go around La Liga and see if they can get another team to bite and come to the CPL.
Well, Jeff, speaking of Edmonton, we got some Canadian men's national team talk now to dive into. And
Mm-hmm.
the Canadian men's
Uh-oh.
national team roster for their MLS camp drops on Wednesday, as we know, and we'll be talking to John Herdman on Wednesday. And of course, this roster will be for a
Mm-hmm.
upcoming friendly against Bahrain in Bahrain on November the 11th, I believe it is, just off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
It was announced not that long ago that they would have this camp. What sort of things are you looking for from this camp?
I imagine it's going to be a fairly MLS heavy camp, as
Yes.
MLS players are now out of season, and the international players are trying to get the last little bit of play in before the World Cup break, which of course is throwing everything out of whack. As if the pandemic wasn't bad enough, then we go straight to having a World Cup in the winter. So it's just fixture congestion upon fixture congestion. What am I hoping to see? I'm hoping to see some of the fringe players make a case for their inclusion into Qatar. We know we now have a hole in defense, as Scott Kennedy is going to miss the tournament.
Hmm.
I'm not necessarily sure that place wasn't going to be taken by a European, but there is a spot for fringe guys to sort of make a claim for their inclusion in the squad.
Like Daniil Henry or Joel
Yeah,
Waterman?
that was the first. Those are the first two names I was thinking of, actually. Yeah, yeah.
I
But
imagine both
again,
of
you know,
those
when
guys
we
will be at that camp. Yeah,
so do I, so do I. I mean, we were saying that Daniil is probably getting his ticket based on
he'll probably be
loyalty
there
and what he's
regardless.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a case for Joel Waterman. Um, and again, it's an opponent that isn't CONCACAF, so it's another test as you know this World Cup very quickly approaches. I can't believe how soon it's coming. It's craziness. Um, you
In
know,
a
so
climate,
so
by the
yeah,
way,
like
that's right by Qatar, right? So in a really
yeah,
similar
exactly,
climate.
exactly. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's you know, we lamented the lack of tune-up games when the S hit the F. With regards to the scheduled games against Iran, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're sort of clawing back some tune-up games. And I would be willing to make the argument that these are, because of where they are in the calendar leading up to the World Cup, more important because there's not enough time for you to forget lessons learned or knocks taken in these last two tune-up games. So it's going to be really important for everybody, and I think you know, especially considering the malaise and the sort of behind the scenes shenanigans that's going on with CanSoc, you know,
Mm.
getting on the field and kicking a ball in anger as opposed to, you know, getting on the field of the court of public opinion or whatever the hell is going on right now, um, is important to this team,
you you
doubly
can't
so.
ignore that.
So no, you can't ignore that. We've
You
been
can't
trying,
ignore
but you
that, right?
can't. And the more we try to ignore it, the more it seems to fester and into a, you know, I don't like talking about this, but the, you know, one thing that I've noticed is that it's starting to fester into an us versus them kind of binary argument. You know how much I hate binary arguments. The world is far too complex to be,
Yeah.
you know, thrown into a this versus this or a this good, that bad kind of situation. And if left to their own devices, I think people, and again, we do this all the time because it's an easier narrative, but I think when left to their own devices, people are too quick to fall into that trap of the us versus them. It's a very complicated issue, and a lot of things are being manifest right now. And I just think that the best thing that we can do right now is get out there and kick a ball in anger. And thankfully, that's what we're doing. And give
Yeah.
the team and the players on the team different things to stress about. You know, give the MLS guys an opportunity to assert themselves and then get you know get their minds in order, their minds and bodies in order for what's going to be an exceptional event. And it gives the coaching staff an opportunity to start banding around what's actually going to happen and proper concrete game plans towards Qatar, which I think is also doubly important, trying to tune
Well,
out the noise otherwise.
yeah. Well, you saw them sort of start to turn the page during the last window, the September window.
Hmm.
All the players and coaches were saying all the right things about where their focus is, and you have to imagine that once they kick a ball, perhaps against Japan, that it'll all be put on the periphery, and their
I
main
hope so.
focus and all the discussion will be talking about football. But speaking of sort of the
Hmm.
football aspect of this, Bob Bradley went on a little bit of I wouldn't call it a rant, but just like a little bit of a sidebar
Let's
during his
go.
end of season press conference. Uh, this is still a men's national team relative, but he essentially said when he was coaching at the World Cup with the US, and one of the things that really helped them prepare for that tournament was the lead up to that tournament and how
Hmm.
they ended up playing Argentina. They ended up playing Brazil. They're playing games in Europe, but they had a lot of friendly matches leading up to the start of the tournament, which helped them prepare for teams like England and just a lot of
Sure.
different scenarios that were going to arise at the tournament. So my question to you is, do you think Canada has played enough competitive matches, meaningful fixtures in the lead up to the World Cup?
If this was a summer tournament and COVID didn't exist, my answer would be a resounding no. But taking into account fixture congestion, taking into account this tournament is happening in November, taking into account all the shenanigans and the faff, I think this is as good as we could have hoped for. And I also think that I need to raise the point that, you know, there are a whole new set of variables that are coming into play as a result of the scheduling of this World Cup in November. So you're going to have weirdo injuries because guys are going to be tired or they're going to be out
Romelu
of form in their
Lukaku.
domestic season. Almost De Bruyne. I mean, damn it, but almost, almost De Bruyne. Listen, we're going to see it take its toll on form, both good and bad, and it's going to manifest in some weirdo ways. So, I mean, to me, are 3 more tune-up games worth Fonzie playing regular minutes at Bayern in a title race right now and getting all kinds of minutes as they push to reassert themselves in the Bundesliga? I don't know. Is 2 camps worth over and above Jonathan David getting regular minutes at Lille, and having himself a field day for most games? I don't know. Again, I'd be willing to hear an argument from both sides. Certainly, they're not playing the Canada style, so there is that difficult adjustment from what they're being asked to do with their club teams versus what they're being tasked to do for Canada. But they are, for lack of a better word, in fighting shape. And that brings with it its whole another whole set of variables, right? So it's going to be interesting, but I don't think you can quantify it with in terms of historical precedent. I think it's a fair question to ask, but there's just so much different coming into this World Cup that it throws a lot of those former metrics completely out of whack.
Yeah, here's my concern: is Canada have yet to play a team like Belgium or Croatia, and that's no disrespect to Uruguay, who
No,
are a
of course
very
not.
good team, but they're not Belgium and they're not Croatia. And we saw what this team looked like in the first 20 minutes against Uruguay before they finally settled into that match. So I'm concerned that this team doesn't know what it's going up against and how
I would
prepared they'll
agree with
be
you.
to go
I
face
would
that
agree with
giant.
you, but I mean, not to segue into what we'll talk about later with the MLS Cup playoffs, but you look at the precedent of Austin's regular season against LAFC, and the expectation was that they weren't going to drop dead, scare, like they weren't going to look as bad as they did at the weekend. So we could have played Belgium 100 times versus 0 times, and the result under the big lights might be entirely the same. It might be entirely different. There's merit to what you're saying, but considering that, I mean, how many times have we read that Canada's game plan should be surprising these teams? Well, you can't surprise a team if they faced you before. You know what I mean? So it is a double-edged sword, right? I think we need to look at our boys and what their skill sets are in the transition game and stuff like that. And so for every mention of, well, we don't know what we're up against, that midfield battle, we've never faced a team that it fires on all cylinders to the degree of Belgium when they're really flying. Well, Belgium's never had to face the multi-pronged attack that Canada has on our best day. So I think there is
That's
an
debatable.
advantage.
I think there are teams that have better attacks than Canada that Belgium
Sure. But they have, but I mean, we're talking specifically about Belgium and the way that they work. And now I'm flipping it to Canada and the way that we work. Now, I do think that
I like it.
yeah. I just think that the negativity perspective where we're like, because my second question is, well, how, what is proper, right? Like, even if you eliminate all the variables, even if you eliminate the fixture congestion, COVID, November, all the stuff that I've been talking about for the last 10-20 minutes, right? Like, what's the magic number for you? Like, what would make you stop asking that question? Is Canada tuned up enough? And is it realistic? Is there any way in any season that we'd be happy because of the nature of international camps and versus domestic seasons and that sort of thing?
Right. Yeah. I don't know if there's any sort of magic number, but I would love to have seen them at least get one game in where they're playing an opponent that's like that. Obviously, it's easier said than done because these opponents have to agree to face Canada. wherever the location was. Then obviously the June window was just a complete write off. Yeah, as you mentioned, there's
Hmm.
money is also involved in a lot of these things. So yeah, in a perfect world, I would love to see them get 2 games in against a top flight opponent just to prepare themselves. Um,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
but maybe there is some of that youthful ignorance that you're kind of referring to that'll
yeah,
play to
yeah. I
Canada's
mean,
strength, right?
Nathan, or play into our weakness. I mean, what if we had played Belgium in the run up before we knew we were in their group and they cleaned our clogs? You know, the knock on effect of that, finding out that we have to face them again after they judiciously mopped the floor with us, might have had an effect much different than this sort of trepidation about facing them. Nathan really sells it quite eloquently in the chat. He says the reality is we won't be ready for something we haven't done in 36 years. I don't think there's a better, more simplistic way to express it than that. This is new territory for the Canadian men's national team, and as long as we don't get ahead of ourselves, I don't think you or I are expecting us to win the World Cup. As long as we maintain sort of the less lofty expectations of what the group is going to do in this tournament, which is stake a claim for themselves in 2026, score a goal, definitely, possibly come away with a win or a result, and then we're good. I don't think we're going to get disappointed here. Um, and for me, the other goal of this World Cup is getting some of these players big money moves to bigger clubs and bigger leagues off the back of strong performances in this tournament, which I think we can do whether or not we do end up losing to Belgium and Croatia, which is a
Oh,
significantly good chance of
I'll tell
happening.
you something. John Herdman would absolutely love that because he
Hmm.
does not love his players playing in Major League Soccer because he thinks they can play in
Hmm.
better leagues, which I tend to agree with on a lot of these cases. But one interesting, we'll have a lot of time to dive into this men's national team. But one thing I want to bring up
We sure
because I
will.
think it is relevant right now is Kyle Larin, who at
Hmm.
Club Brugge, he's not getting minutes. He's not
Yeah,
getting playing
yeah.
time. Does he still start for Canada, in your opinion? Against Belgium in game one, does he start for Canada?
That's a toughie. Who would you? I mean, I'm going to turn around on you. Who gets his spot?
Well, I personally believe, based off what we learned against Uruguay, that this team is better off congesting the midfield
Sure.
and playing more bodies in the midfield. So, on that note, I'd probably throw in a guy like Junior Hoylett into the middle of the park,
Never going to argue for the
right?
inclusion of my man Junior Hoylett. So I agree with you.
Just to, give Canada that extra body because we know they're not going to be playing with the ball up top. That's the
Yeah,
sobering reality of playing a team like Belgium is you're going to concede
it's a
possession
midfield battle. Oh, of course, of course.
like
I think that's
70
not a
50.
bad shout, Mike. I think that's not a bad shout. I mean,
But at the same
you know,
time, Jeff, there's the
mhm,
other side of it. When Kyle Larin plays for Canada, he's insane. Like
mhm.
there's something different. It's like there's a couple of guys on this team that when they play for Canada, like Richie Larea, no matter how many minutes he gets,
Yeah, Will
he
Dunn just said
finds
that.
a way to oh, perfect. He finds a way to
Hmm.
turn up for Canada, right?
Yep.
Kyle Larin I'd throw into that same boat. But I think just from a tactical perspective, like forget the fact he's not in form. From a tactical perspective, I wonder if it makes more sense to if you're going to drop a forward. Obviously, he's going to be the one to
To
drop.
game. Yeah, I think it makes perfect tactical sense aside from my unholy love of Junior Hoylett. But like, yeah, I do think it's a good shout. Maybe start that way and then see what happens. And if, but again, do you want to encourage that midfield battle or do you set yourself up to play as a bunker and counter team? If so, you want all the forwards you can get on the field for those long balls and transition opportunities. And if that's the way, if that's the only way you have a snowball's chance in hell of beating Belgium, then trying to meet them on their own terms is a fool's errand. So I would honestly suggest you go in guns blazing, see what happens for the first 15, 20 minutes, maybe even the first half, and then make your adjustments as necessary and hope that you're not chasing the game, chasing a 3-4 goal deficit.
Yeah. There's also the reality that both Jonathan David and Kyle
Mm-hmm.
Larin play better when one another is on the pitch. It wasn't the case for a little
Yeah.
bit through qualifying, but I think bigger sample size, both of those guys play better when they're not the sole number 9. Both Jonathan David with Lille, he likes to play off his number
Hmm.
9, and then Kyle Larin, of course, he plays way better when Jonathan David's on the pitch. So there is that aspect of things too. But I think it's just an interesting
Yeah.
situation to keep an eye on as sort of we get closer to the World Cup, because we know
Well,
how important he
yeah,
is to the team.
I just think the more we embrace what the identity of this team, which is a pacey counter-attacking team, and the less we try and galaxy brain our game plans, I think that's, you go in guns blazing and you hope for the best result, and you adjust tactically as you go, especially in that first game. Your
But
first kick at the can. Yeah.
the issue
No,
is
I
the other
hear you,
team
Mike. I
has
hear you.
way bigger guns and way more artillery, that if you
Listen,
go for a
I
gunfight,
hear you. I hear you, but if you go for a staring contest, such as what you're suggesting, like stalking the midfield and trying to control that midfield battle,
Mhm.
you may
It's
end
still
up
playing off the counter
in.
with Fonzie,
Yeah,
Tajon, and Jonathan David, which isn't a bad
it's
front
just
three.
it isn't. I just wonder if the move is forever embracing what we are, warts and all, and then just
Yeah,
and hoping that
stick with what kind of
that
got you
power
here, right?
stick with what kind of got you here. Stick with the hot hands.
Yeah.
Nathan's asking for any kind of illumination on the Laren situation. He start off well? What went wrong for him? You wanna handle that one?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say he really started off too well. It fell out of form with the manager, I guess, is the best way to sort of put this. Kyle
Yeah.
Laren's a strong believer that if he's on the pitch, he's going to produce. I remember he told Matthew Shinetti that because Bruges wasn't playing him, and I forget who it is on their team, but they've stepped up and they've done better than what Kyle
Hmm.
Laren
Hmm.
is doing right now. So honestly, I don't know if this was the right move for Kyle Larin to go to Club Brugge.
Hmm.
I know we're just a couple months into his transfer, but I do believe that there probably would have been better fits for him if he went elsewhere.
Yeah,
I think
I
there's too
remember
much
you saying that when
competition.
the move was announced. Well, I mean, the Jupiler Pro League is notorious for competition at all positions, right? That's why excelling there is so special. Yeah. I mean, you know, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? Maybe he had a better situation at his former club, and he didn't recognize that until he moved on, and now it's another Richie kind of situation where he has to reset his situation for himself. But I do agree with you. I don't think he's as out of form as his recent spell at Bruges would suggest. I think he'll be fine come the World Cup. He's just that kind of player. When he gets the bit between his teeth, he'll be fine.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Okay, now let's just quickly, you mentioned it before, but let's tee up what should be I think, a very exciting cup final. And number one seed
Yeah,
versus number one seed, not
yeah.
something you
First time
get.
it's happened in MLS since 2003. I did my research on that
Exactly.
one.
Yeah, so
Yeah, yeah.
Philadelphia against LAFC. As I mentioned off the top of the show, these were two teams I think many people had touted to reach the final sort of midway through the
Yep.
year.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia put up one of the best seasons in league history, yet LAFC were the ones to emerge victorious with the Supporter Shield. Of course, we
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen a Supporter Shield winner go on to win the MLS Cup since.
I can't remember who was it. It sounds familiar. Like when did that happen? 2017, I believe. Yeah, us. Oh yeah, us.
Something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see what happens with LAFC. What's interesting though, Jeff, is LAFC had a lot of these big name summer signings in terms of Christian
Mm-hmm.
Teo and Gareth Bale and Chiellini.
Mm-hmm.
Yet none of these guys, aside from Chiellini,
Played the
really is
first half. Yeah.
playing
Yeah.
a role right now for LAFC. I just wanted to get your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on the situation there in terms of the fact Gareth Bale isn't getting minutes. I know he has an injury, quote unquote injury, but he was available off the bench. And I think something to keep in mind here is the World Cup is 3 weeks away. So is it something
Well,
that he
yeah,
doesn't want to get
yeah. I
injured?
mean, yeah, he came to LAFC on a sweetheart deal to get playing time ahead of the World Cup. So it really hasn't worked out for him. Both of these moves remind me of like old school MLS moves, like Chiellini coming in. I mean, how old is he? 3,000 years old, right? Like they're not in a World Cup, but that reeked of like old school MLS as retirement league kind of move. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy's ancient now, and I obviously he can still play at a certain clip, but he wasn't cutting it anymore. So this is his like this is his victory lap sort of thing. So all's well. He played 30 minutes of the conference final for a 30 million year old defender, regardless of pedigree. I think that's a fair shout. So I'm not too upset about that. The Bale move, I mean, it's almost akin to the Laren move, right? Like he didn't. It seems like part of the calculus was messed up, because whether he came in with a knock or whether he just simply got played out of the squad, he just can't find a place there. I mean,
They're a
signing a
better
team that
team
already
without
has,
him,
well,
right? Is
exactly. I mean,
that just
you
me?
watch
Yeah.
it, you watch him and Vela on the field together, and they get in each other's way,
Yeah.
often. And you're not, unfortunately, as good as Bale is, he doesn't have the pedigree of Carlos Vela in this league, and he found himself wanting. So yeah, I
James
mean, hmm?
James Sharman and I talked about this earlier today at work, and he mentioned how Bale was essentially a luxury signing. Same with Chiellini.
Yeah,
Like LAFC
yeah,
were in first before both of
they were
these guys
fine.
came in. And now the fact that they're
Hmm.
not playing and just coincidentally they're kind of because they sort of limped in a way, limped into the postseason. But now they're
Hmm.
back to
Hmm.
playing some of their best football, and just coincidentally it's without two of these guys. So I think that's just a testament to the fact that where both of these guys are in their career. Um, Especially, I think it's very alarming for Gareth Bale, who is supposed to play that role yet again for Wales, where he's supposed to be the hero and save his
Hmm.
team and
Yeah,
bring them on a run to the World Cup. Well, guess what? I think U.S. men's national team fans who watch Gareth Bale this season are not
yeah,
worried about
are not
Wales as much
afraid.
anymore,
No,
right? They're
no,
not
no.
afraid, exactly. So maybe that backfired a little bit for him. But shout out to
I
LFC,
mean,
who
did it
will
did
be.
it backfire? He was on the fringes of Real Madrid for how long of his time there? I mean, what was the expectation that he would just
Well,
run roughshod through MLS?
no, I
he's
was
got
just
such a,
I
yeah,
that was just a bit tongue in cheek because they're in the US's group at the World Cup.
yeah. No,
So now
I
US
know.
men's
There aren't
national
they the
team
first
fans are
game? Yeah,
not
yeah,
going.
yeah.
So it backfired for Wales in a way, for Gareth Bale in a way, because now he lost that allure effect of, okay, what's going to happen when Gareth Bale picks up the ball? We got to give him, some space. We got to respect his
Hmm.
ability. Now,
Yeah,
man, you're right up on Gareth Bale. Don't give him any
yeah,
space. He can't
yeah. No,
physically overpower
absolutely.
you anymore, right? So
Not anymore.
I think
Not
in that
anymore.
way,
Yeah.
I think it backfired a little bit. But yeah, you're right. He was not a player who was going to go make an impact at a European team. I mean, we saw that spell at Tottenham, right? When he
Hmm.
moved from Real Madrid to Tottenham, he was not the same player.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I
Exactly.
guess we'll see. The MLS Cup final goes down November 5th. My pick is the Union. I picked them from the start of the MLS
Really,
Cup playoffs.
really.
Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
they've been so dominant. They've been the best
They
defensive
really
team this
have.
year, right? And
They've been the
defense,
best
it's
defensive team,
cliche.
and offensively they haven't been a slouch either. They've been great.
Exactly.
Um, though I don't know if Bedoya's coming back. He looked pretty
Yeah.
pained there, so that's a rather huge hole in their squad. Um, I don't know. I just think LAFC might be the team of destiny this year. Uh,
We'll see. Because
Considering they have yet to win an MLS Cup, and they've won a lot of awards and plaudits on the way. I think it may be their time. That
and they're
being
at home.
said, and they're at home, and that can't be undervalued. It really can't. I mean, you look at the two
13-2 at 2
games
at
at the
home.
weekend. Yeah, you look at the games at the weekend, and in both cases, home field advantage really played a part of it. So you can't ignore that. I mean, look at Philly though. To just what was that spell in their game at the weekend? They scored 2 goals or 3 goals in like 11 minutes or something like that.
3 goals,
They
yeah.
can hurt you. They can
But
really hurt you when you take your foot off the gas. So
it is worth mentioning that was at Subaru Park, where Philadelphia Union were the only team in MLS this year that did not lose a game at home. They've actually won 11 straight games. But then when you
wow.
look at their record away from home, they're 7-5-5, which is, for an MLS team that's actually pretty good. To be above
Yeah.
500 on the road is pretty
Pretty
good,
magical, yeah.
pretty good accomplishment. But they're not LAFC, where LAFC are now 13-2-2 at home.
Damn.
So now they're gonna have to do that at Banc of California. I think they'll enter the game as pretty decent underdogs, but I have a feeling that Jim Curtin has something up his sleeve, and with the way that some of these youngsters have been able to plug and play, like Jack McGlynn went in and did a serviceable job in that game.
Sure as hell did.
I think they'll find a way to get this done. I think defense, again, it's cliche, but defense wins championships, and the way that Kai Wagner and Klesnes and Elliott are all playing there at the back, I think Vela will have some trouble breaking them down. So it's honestly like, this has to be one of the best finals we've seen probably since 2017, since TFC Sounders. Like, this one should be quite the cracker. So we'll see. Jeff, prediction, who you got?
I'm gonna go LAFC just to be contrary, and then we'll see which one of us pick the winner. I just think LAFC is the team of destiny this year, and they're gonna find a way. But can't look past, you can't not respect this Philadelphia Union side, and they're coming into it with some fire, having won. I'm remiss to call it a revenge game, but we all remember last season when they went out to NYCFC missing every player and half their uniforms and their kit guy and water bottles. So yeah, I do think it's gonna be a fun MLS Cup. Every year that TFC is not in the playoffs, I'm always like, am I gonna bother this season? And I always do. I inevitably do. It's the league that we follow. We get to see these players on the regular. It's nice to see the different venues with proper fan support. The playoffs bring out the crowds, so it's nice to see those games. And MLS is a playoff league. Anybody that pretends otherwise is missing the point. It has been and will always be a playoff centric league, and they really bring out the faff and the fanfare for the playoffs. So
I think our guy Jeffrey P. Nesker might have froze. Well, there will be, regardless of who wins, Philadelphia or LAFC, there will be a new champion crowned, because none of these teams have won the MLS Cup before. Jeff, I think we got you back. You there? Sound check? I think he froze again.
No.
All good.
Yeah, this is terrible. Well,
okay. So just quickly, just moving on. I'm sad Jeff isn't here actually right now, because I wanted to talk about Toronto FC's. Oh, we got Jeff?
Yeah, I'm back.
All right, cool. So we have a question I wanted to ask.
Do you want me to leave? Because
No, you're good. You're back. So
Okay.
Obviously, with TFC fans, they're all wondering what the heck's going to happen in free agency. And I think,
can we go through the dates, the important dates to remember?
Sure, if you want to give that a quick rundown.
Sure. So November 7th to November 9 is the 48-hour trade window. The expansion draft is November the 11th. The reentry process begins with stage 1 on the 17th of November. Stage 2 begins on November the 22nd. And on the 16th, right before that, MLS free agency begins. Now, I have a feeling I know what question you're going to ask me, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, seriously, and all this is going to be happening while the World Cup is going on. So probably not going to get the most amount of coverage.
Fixture congestion, yeehaw!
We will do our best. What I want to ask you, just quickly, is we all know that TFC want to shore up their spine. Now, one of these guys is not technically a free agent, but he is available. But the biggest names on sort of the market is, New York City FC goalkeeper Sean Johnson, New York Red Bulls defender center back Aaron Long, and then up top Joseph Martinez, who, as we know, is not going to be going back to Atlanta United next season, though he still is under contract for 1 year. In a dream scenario, Jeff, I throw it to you. If you were to pick one of these three guys to join Toronto FC in the offseason,
Aaron
who
Long.
would it be and why?
Aaron Long with bells on, because he is a Drew Moore-ish kind of dude, and we've succeeded with Drew Moore-ish kind of dudes. Even though NYCFC are out of the competition, I can't see Sean Johnson leaving that team. And I discussed this with Newell last week. Unless we're willing to offer him a DP slot, we'd be competing with any other team that's going to go max tam on him, right? He's making what, like $300K less than max tam on his current deal with NYCFC?
No, he's making 550. He made less than Alex Bono last year.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we'll be he's going to get an offer in and around max tam from just about any team in MLS. You disagree? You think his next step is $1 million as opposed to $1.6 million?
Yeah, I'd say something around 750. While he's been a fantastic goalkeeper, he's also 33 years old, right? And I think he was really motivated by the World Cup this year. And I'm not saying he won't be motivated moving forward, but I know goalkeepers go on; they have longer careers, but committing a lot of money to a guy like Sean Johnson, who's 33, going to be 34 in May, that's a risk. So I'm not sure that market is going to be out there to throw over $1 million at Sean Johnson. I think they're around 750.
That's fair. That's fair. But would we be willing to spend $750 on a 33-year-old goalkeeper? Like you said, that may come off this season of real motivation to a season where he maybe doesn't give as much of a crap next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's
especially considering our goalkeeper woes, especially considering how much money we've shipped out to underperforming goalkeepers over the last couple seasons.
Exactly.
To me, I don't even know if it's worth the overture, right? And I'll say this for Joseph. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He's a shadow. I mean, there's a reason that his stock has fallen so low with Atlanta United over the last couple of seasons. One, he hasn't been the same player since his injury. He's consistently getting re-injured, and his relationship with the front office deteriorated to dust. Who does that remind you of, Mikey Singh? I mean, we just shed that albatross of a deal. Why would we get into a situation where we're now giving money to somebody to rediscover prior form on our dime? Absolutely not. Without question, absolutely not. Joseph Martinez is not the only number 9 in the world. There are plenty of other number 9s, including potentially the next Joseph Martinez, if our scouting department does their job. So for me, it's insanely no, absolutely no, like screaming no, absolutely not. Don't touch this guy with a 10-foot pole. I mean, we've had our Joseph Martinez. We don't want another one this quickly. No. Just the short answer is no. Aaron Long,
he's
to
probably
me,
won a
is a viable opportunity, depending on. Yeah, and that's what gives me pause, because there's so many other moving parts with respect to this next step of our roster rebuild. Is he? If it was Walker Zimmerman, and even now Walker Zimmerman's maybe on a bit of an off year, but like if it was ideal Walker Zimmerman, that's a center back that to me you may want to dangle that DP carrot. But Aaron Long. Nah. Certainly make an overture, put some money out there, see what the interest is. But here's the question: do you think Aaron Long is the guy? Like, if TFC gets Aaron Long, does it immediately make our defense that much better?
I think
can you say that with any sort of a surety? I think anything would help right now. Like putting me and you in there in a 2-person sweater might help the defensive woes. But yeah. Like I just don't know. I just is it a slam dunk or not? I mean, I don't know. So
Yeah, the thing is,
be cautious.
I want to add on that front is I don't believe TFC will go out and make a splash like this within MLS. They just don't have that much money to play with, where they're throwing out deals like max TAM deals or significant amount of money on one player. What they want to do is, again, we keep talking about this, like 2016, is sort of spread it out and bring in veterans who are relatively cheap. Like Drew Moore was relatively cheap considering what the role that he played for TFC. A starter who was making what, less than 500K. Same with Baker. Same thing.
Let the other teams in MLS blow their brains out on the Sean Johnsons and the Aaron Longs and the Joseph Martin. It speaks, there's a part of me that wants to dismiss all of this as like, well, they're not, why are they not being renewed with their sides? Why are their present clubs even considering moving on from them? Should that light a pall over their desirability with the rest of the teams in MLS? Do you know what I mean? Like, why should we get 100% excited over guys that aren't, for whatever reason, staying with their club sides, right? And with Joseph, that's an easy thing.
I think the biggest thing that stems from is that we can all see that TFC need more MLS level ready players and good MLS ready players who are capable of slotting in and playing in Toronto FC.
And that's the catch-22. Right? You're 100% right. You're 100% right. Yeah, it does stem from that.
Have to be,
but do you want to pay top dollar? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I think they're going to have to discover the next one, right? So I wouldn't expect too many of those big name splashes to be coming to TFC. But we'll see. Maybe they can work out a deal with a guy like Sean Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, then you've got to wonder why does he want to listen? Graham's saying Johnson probably doesn't want to play in a baseball stadium for the last contract of his career. There's merit to that, but does he want to come to a club in the midst of a very aggressive rebuild? That here are the porn again. I can't turn them off. I have no power. That's on you. Yay. I mean, I don't know. Like, you're right.
We'll see.
You want to explore your options in MLS. Yeah. I mean, for me, I'd like to see TFC splash some cash in the goalkeeper position. I really think TFC should.
They need to solidify it, right?
Pursuing. Yeah, I think they need to go to Europe. To some really big teams and try and pry their second or third string keeper away from them. Guys that are getting not irregular minutes or only playing in domestic cup competitions that are hungry. I'm back, I think.
Internet's not doing great for you.
I think I'm back. I have no idea what's going on, if that's me or you or whatever the case may be, but internet is garbage today for both of us, eh?
Yeah, seriously. Okay, last thing. Let's just wrap this show up. But last thing we need to touch on is
still of your Messi face, which is very fun for everyone. Or if I'm just like stuck in limbo.
I think Jeff is having some serious apologies for the technical difficulties, everyone. Okay, I'll just wrap this show up. Just last thing I want to touch on is Lionel Messi. The rumors that came out today, the report from The Athletic that says Inter Miami do believe that they will be signing Lionel Messi in June, which is absolutely absurd to think about, right? Who would have thought that Lionel Messi would find a way or Inter Miami would find a way to land Lionel Messi with the form that he's in right now? You would think that he still has a couple years that he can play in Europe. You could think that there is still a possibility that he can perform at the highest level, but yet here is Inter Miami being linked to Messi, which I think is, I mean, we've all heard the rumors for years about this being a possibility, but the fact that it seems like it's pretty close to happening is really surreal. And I think Messi moving to Inter Miami which I do believe is realistic, by the way. I do believe that there is a real possibility that that
Oh
does
yeah,
happen.
oh yeah, yeah. There's language in his deal with PSG that includes that stipulation. So yeah.
Yeah, well, even beyond his deal because he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. I think that would,
Hmm.
I mean, what that would do for Major League Soccer would be absolutely incredible. And
Monstrous,
I'm
incredible, incredible.
selfishly, it's a move that I want to see. I want to see it happen
Me
because
too.
I want to watch Messi in MLS. I want to cover him. I want to,
One hundred
chat with
percent.
him. I want to do whatever it is. I want to see Messi in
I want
Major
to be
League
his best
Soccer.
friend.
But
Let's go out for beers
yeah,
with Lionel Messi for sure. For sure.
exactly. But realistically, I
Yeah.
think the best move for his career would probably be to go back to Barcelona. Because he's playing so well right now, or re-sign with PSG because this guy is
Yeah.
not washed yet. And no offense to MLS, but I think Lionel Messi has the potential to walk into Major League Soccer when he is washed. So
Yeah.
we'll see kind of how that plays out. But just Jeff, just your overall thoughts about um,
Well, I mean the caveat here is what we'll call the Gareth Bale conundrum, right? What if you come to MLS and the expectation is that you're going to kick ass and take names and you don't? Will Messi's legacy survive that? If you
I
ask
think he'll
10
be
people, 10
okay.
out of 10 would say Messi's going to come here and kick it. Well, I mean 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 said the same about Gareth Bale. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go Lorenzo, but 100 out of 100 TFC fans would have said the same thing about Lorenzo. Uh, I just, if anybody's concerned about, the way that their legacy gets seen, it's elite players such as this as they enter the twilight of their careers. They don't want to do anything to besmirch what came before it. You know, someone's doing that calculus. Like MLS is incredibly there. It's technically it's well behind the eight ball in terms of the bigger leagues in the world, but physically you hear it from a lot of players that come across the pond that they weren't
Right.
expecting how physical and how little time they'd have on the ball in MLS. That could be Messi kryptonite, right? And
Well,
and
two
I don't. I
things.
think the last thing the league wants is Lionel Messi showing up to Inter Miami and laying a turd. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know how they would
Well,
spin that, right? Like, well, good. Look,
well,
our league, Diego Fagundes is so good, guys, that he undid Lionel Messi, right? Like, I can't even see that article in the mothership. So yeah.
well, two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, it's messy. Like we're not talking about Insigne. We're not
Mm-hmm.
talking about Gareth Bale. Like we're talking about Lionel Messi, who is in
Yeah. Yeah.
incredible form right now, right? Heading into this World Cup. Like this is a different stature of player. If Messi comes and doesn't perform in MLS, I don't think it's Messi's fault. I think it'll probably be the
Mm-hmm.
players around Messi. Second thing
Mm-hmm.
is his legacy will never be tarnished. At this point, he's playing with house money. Like it could be
Yeah.
tarnished for a scandal, like maybe that regard, but in terms of what he's accomplished, you can't take that away from him. I think regardless of what happens between now and the end of his career, he will go down as one of, if not the greatest footballer of all time. This isn't
Of
Gareth
all
Bale.
time.
This is
Yeah.
a different
Yeah.
conversation. So I don't
I
think he
feel
needs to
you.
worry
I
about
feel you.
his
But just imagine the bad vibes if it doesn't work out at Inter Miami. You
great
know what I
content.
mean?
That's
Like
what I'm
that's just
seeing.
yeah.
I see great content.
All right. All right. I'll leave that to your purview. Um, but yeah, no. I mean, if he wants to come to Inter Miami, why don't we tell him about how hot the summers are in Toronto and try and turn him that way?
I like
Well,
it.
forget about Miami. It gets really hot in Toronto in the summertime. Um,
I,
Yeah, I mean, who knows what Messi's going to make if he comes to Inter Miami? Who knows how the deal will get structured? Who knows
probably be a
what
nunner.
kind of? Yeah, I mean, I know MLS has said they don't want to do that again, but this is Lionel Messi. All bets are off. I know MLS penalized Inter Miami for, shall we say, creatively structuring deals. I can't imagine they're going to be too upset about how creative a deal is structured that brings Lionel Messi to their league. This is a very different situation than the Insignes or the Bales of the world, which Mike has said so eloquently. So yeah, bring it on. bring it on, man. If he wants to come here, let you know. Who are we to say? Who are we to say no? Yeah,
Yeah, that's yes, 10 times out of 10. It's just a matter of whether or not
yeah.
he will. But
Mm-hmm.
anyways, that it's going to wrap up our show. We appreciate everybody
Yeah.
for bearing
Holding
with
up with
us.
us as the internet was terrible. I'm going to call Bell and scream at them after I get off this this show. So yeah,
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're gonna dive into a lot more Canadian men's national team talk between now and the World Cup, and obviously as the World Cup goes on, we'll sprinkle in some TFC as well because obviously we're a TFC based show and we like chatting
I didn't
about the
get to
Reds.
ask you my super TFC question actually, because you missed the WTR award roundup last week.
Okay, quickly, what was
You're
your super TFC
yeah,
question?
the curious case of the missing Lorenzo Insigne in almost all of the awards, from goal celebration to favorite newcomer to favorite TFC player. Berna ran roughshod with all of those awards, from
Yeah,
the staffers selections to the vote, the actual poll, to the comments after the fact. Absolutely nobody in any way, shape, or form defended or brought up Insigne's rather suspect absence from those awards. And I just wonder what your thoughts on
well,
that are.
yeah, I think two things. Well, one, Bernadeschi is the most likable person in the world. I think that's up for debate. I mean, you see
Yeah,
any sort
yeah,
of
that's not
content
up
with
for debate.
Bernadeschi, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, right? And I think he's clearly become a fan favorite here in Toronto. He puts himself out there a lot more, and B, I also think it's a little bit hipster too, and people like to be hipster, right?
That's what I
Especially with
said.
those
That's what I said. I said it's the
award
hipster pick.
voting.
But I mean, as a former managing editor, you're aware of the fanfare that surrounded Insigne's arrival, and you're aware of the lifers on that site that are like Italian anything. So the fact that we got no blowback was interesting. I'm not going to say surprising, because I didn't vote for him in any of those categories. So I mean, I can't surprise myself, but like it was interesting to see. And it, Mike and I were discussing this a lot over last week. Moving forward, do you think that means that TFC is going to go with the hot hands and see much more of the responsibility of being the sort of face of the team to Bernadeschi, because that's what's working, and ignore, the Il Magnifico faff? And further to that, do you think that this is a blessing in disguise? Because from what we've seen, Bernadeschi is far more willing to be that face than it looks like Lorenzo Insigne ever was. If there was anything that struck you as making him uncomfortable, it was those public appearances. That could be the language barrier, it could be his personality. But what are your thoughts on this? Like, obviously, the smart play is TFC embraces what they've got in the most likable man on the planet and just rolls with the Bernadeschi. But do you think that that's a good or a bad thing for Lorenzo?
Well, I think TFC should do both, right? Lorenzo's still Il Magnifico. I think he has yet to show the best side of Lorenzo. And I think he is for sure a way better footballer than Bernadeschi, in my opinion. I still think he is the guy on this team from a footballing perspective. And from just an overall marketing standpoint, people know the name Lorenzo Insigne a lot more than Federico Bernadeschi.
Well,
Beyond
give him
Toronto,
time.
right?
Give him time, man.
Beyond Toronto is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
Yeah.
overseas and everything like that, right? So there is that aspect of marketing. Now, look, like Bernadeschi, yeah. First time I met Bernadeschi, I said this guy's gonna be a lot more personable, but I don't want it to make it seem like Lorenzo Insigne wasn't, right? Because Lorenzo went through a lot personally
Had a
during
hell of a
his
year,
stretch,
man. Yeah.
right? His stretch here in last 2-3 months in Toronto. So obviously that puts a damper on a lot of things. And when he did talk to us, like he was more than willing. There was the language barrier, which I think is a huge factor.
Absolutely.
They're different people. Like no one,
Yeah.
if you're setting the bar at Bernadeschi, everybody is going to fall short
Fail.
of that, including
Yeah,
Lorenzo
100%.
Insigne. Right. So that's my thought of it. And I think next season, I think TFC should market both players heavily, which I think they do a good job of. But I think they can do Bernardeschi a little bit more when it comes to him being one of the faces of this team.
Beautiful. Amazing.
Right.
Come on.
Cool.
Love it. Well done.
Yeah, that's a pretty good impression, man. That was a pretty good impression.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Well, guys, like I said, thank you so much for bearing with us. Maybe don't rate the podcast after listening to this edition of the podcast. But if you're feeling generous, you want to give us a 5-star rating, please feel free.
It's not our fault our internet is garbage today. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be back. Like I said, we'll talk about a lot more different things, TFC, Canada soccer, a lot to dive into, but we appreciate everyone, like, once again, their patience and everything on today's episode. Jeff, any closing remarks?
I don't want I gotta save them for my bell call. I have a lot of thoughts, but they're all about my internet.
Yeah, keep those thoughts vented in. But we'll see you guys next week. Until next time, guys.
Pleasure, Mike.
And wait, and baby, I'm TFC till I die.